All right, great. Go it. Still call it 5:30 p.m. Call this meeting to order. And we're gonna have an invocation by a very good friend of mine, Pastor Melinda Lane, and she'll lead us in the pledge. Ms. Melinda?
Right.
You got it.
We're gonna pray first or pledge first?
So prayer.
Prayer. So, thanks for the honor of coming and praying with you tonight. You know, Jesus said, a house divided against itself cannot stand in Matthew 12:25. And Psalm 133, verse 1 says, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. And I thought about this. I've been praying for you guys all week, thinking about you, praying for you auspicious people all week by name. Philippians 4:6-7 says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will exceed everything we understand, and his peace will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. You, ladies and gentlemen, have a lot on your plate, and some of you do it out of the goodness of your heart. So I would like to know how I can pray for you. Some of you have my personal cell phone number. If you don't, ask Cynthia. She has it. And you can call me and I would be happy to pray for you. Pray for your personal needs, pray for the needs of this city. That's what your pastors in this town are for. We want to pray for you. I don't want this prayer to be an innocuous prayer to come in and just pray for you for a couple of minutes and then leave and go to my next meeting, which I just have. I want it to mean something because I lift this city up. I've been here for almost 26 years pastoring the same church and now a church that we've merged with. And I care about this city and I care about you. Some of you I've known like Vince since he was a kid. Some of you I've known like Bob since he was a kid. and I care about this city. So as we pray tonight, I want God to touch you and I want God to touch this city for you, his servant. So will you bow your heads and join with me in prayer? Fathers, I've been praying for this city and for this group of people by name tonight. I pray now for Mayor Bob Sims, our city manager, Cynthia Northrup, Mayor Pro Tem Rob Durham, who even though he can't be here tonight, I lift him up to you, Father, for Vince Moore, Blake Hamilton, Gary Mercer, Jessica Sutter, for our Public Works Department, our ED, our Fire Department, our EMT, our hospital, for all of those that serve this city. Lord, I pray for the mental health needs of this community. Father, you know how desperate our mental health needs are for our families, for those who lead this city. I'm asking the Lord to give them spiritual wisdom, insight, and knowledge from your throne. Lord, let them become united as one with one voice, with one purpose. You said unless we're united, we really are like a house of cards that will fall. Unless we stand as one, we really can't do anything. Just as we like that bee to show victory, let the unity that begins here burn brightly and light the way for progress in our city. Strengthen each of them and empower them for your glorious, unlimited resources, giving them inner strength through your spirit. As your roots grow deep in them and your love shines through them, let your plan for Breckenridge be fulfilled. Bless these men and women who faithfully serve you, exceedingly abundantly above that which they can ask or think. In Jesus' name, amen. And now will you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, thank you. You're welcome to stay as long as you like.
I got it on.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Open forum. Any speakers? Any speakers? All right. We'll go to the staff report and I'll turn it over to our city manager, Cynthia.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Just a couple things I want to give you some updates on. We are developing in process of updating our septic dumping policy. to not allow septic dumping for several reasons. And Mayor, I know you and I have visited about this, but right now they're pretty much dumping right at our convenience station. And it goes right into the wastewater treatment plant. And because of that, it has caused negative impact to our system operations. And I can talk about, well, I can't talk about some really big details, but Colton can. But we also still are on the honor system. This will impact about 3 or 4 companies that do dump here. There's really, most of these are businesses that are serving people outside of the city limits. We have no way of controlling the contaminants, grease, and anything that they might be dumping into our system. Which has caused some negative impacts with TCEQ violations. And as we've looked around at some other cities, most other cities do not allow this type of dumping for these reasons. And Graham does allow, I will say Graham does allow this type of dumping, but only in their drying beds. And we don't have a drying bed big enough, I mean, to even fill one container, so we wouldn't be able to do that. So our plan is to make this effective August 1st, and we'll send out letters to those 3 or 4 companies that do that, and give them advanced notice. So I wanted to make you aware of that. If you have any questions on any of the negative impacts, let me know. And I mean, Colton is here, our engineers are here for some other items, but they can address that if you do. The other thing, the Texas Water Development Board projects, and those are the projects that we went out in 2022 for, and these are basically the schedules and what's going on with them. Pretty much what you're going to see is that construction on all these projects is going to start. I hope I turned mine off. That's going to start in earnest in 2024. And so that's both for the clean water projects and the drinking water projects. So we do have on one of those projects, Colton is just going to give you a quick update on the wastewater treatment plant operations, which is the clean water program. We do have an update where we're going to change out one of those projects instead of an equalization basin. They've come up with a better approach for that. So you just kind of want to address that.
Okay, for the record, Colton Ridge, project manager with Infotech Hibbs and Todd. So as Cynthia referenced, we've had a little bit of a change in the scope of work for the wastewater treatment plant project. We originally had applied for the construction of an EQ basin, an equalization basin. The intent of that basin would be to, when you had rainfall events, the wastewater plant receives a significant inflow of rainfall that comes in from the collection system into the wastewater plant. Ultimately, the downside of that is it washes out your plant. So all the good bugs that you have in there get washed out. And so we talked about putting in an equalization basin there to kind of catch some of that water before it goes into the wastewater plant. As we've kind of gone through the process, there's some other things that we've identified in the wastewater plant that we feel like would be more appropriate for the treatment of the wastewater that we have right now. That would be probably a better use of the funds than an EQ basin. And the other thing that kind of factors into that is we also have funds in this project to address some of the I&I in the collection system. Actually, we had an inflow and infiltration study that was completed June 15th, I believe, was when it ran through most of the month of May and the first half of June. And it just happened to be a good time because we caught 4 significant rainfall events during that period. We've identified areas within the collection system which have significant amount of inflow and infiltration. So the plan will be to try to address some of that in the collection system. So we'll mitigate a little bit of what's inflowing into the wastewater plant in the collection system and not let it get to the wastewater plant. But it's in lieu of doing the equalization basin, what we're going to do is put in a more robust aeration system in the oxidation ditch. That'll allow us to handle the nitrification process in the wastewater system a lot more effectively than what we have currently. It would give us a little more flexibility with the units that we have now to kind of move them around. They haven't been as robust as we'd like for them to have been, especially when you have these inflows and the water levels rise. They tend to get wet and the motors don't like water, so they wind up getting fried and we have to replace them and bake the motors and get them back in operation. We're gonna get a little bit different technology in there, make that technology more useful and more appropriate for what we're dealing with there. And then hopefully the other thing that this will do is allow us to implement those improvements a little more quickly. Instead of doing yards and yards and yards of dirt work on the backside of the wastewater treatment plant, we'll be able to just install equipment, do that more rapidly. We'll procure that earlier on and be able to implement that sooner than we would be the CQ basin. So it'll help us in a lot quicker timeframe than what we originally planned. So with that, that's kind of the update. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have on that, or the process, or the INI study, anything like that.
Well, and the other component, we don't know exactly how much, but I think you had mentioned it would save some money, so that money.
Yeah, I
would
think
go for more of
Right.
the.
More of the collection system improvements. Based on the initial cost estimates that we've gotten, that cost will be less than what the EQ basin has. So we can, kind of the way that the project is laid out, the wastewater plant improvements are going to be the main priority. And then whatever's left over, we'll be able to filter into the collection system improvements. So you'll have more for the collection system improvements as a part of that project.
Good.
All right.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And then I wanted to give you an update. Last month, I talked about a new project that we've submitted, EHP has submitted on our behalf to the Texas Water Development Board for replacing lead service lines in our system. And right now, it looks like we're currently ranked 45 out of 257 submissions. So more than likely, we will be funded. This is for the inventorying only. And that's going to be at basically 51%, 51% no interest, a low forgiveness, and then 49% no interest. And then that will grant of 387, 97.
It is 379.
379. So our portion would be half of that. And basically we would have a 30-year note with no interest. So the financial impact for that will be relatively light. Now, what I will say is that's just inventorying. So finding out where everything is at, the construction would come after that. This project should be done. We should be completing the project by October of 2024. And we've already discussed, and just with the staffing challenges that we have, I think our strategy is going to be to contract that project out. So we'll write up an RFP for that, and that's probably the March timeframe. So that's what that's looking like. So that's good news. And then the other good news is, well, before I move on to that, the street improvements, the city logo, we spent a lot of time internally looking at this, and we had one of our own people actually design several different options, and staff ranked all the different options. We were trying to, I think the idea was trying to remain true to what is here, but make it cleaner and simplify it. And so this is what we came up with. Now, it has been pointed out, so we do need to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit, I think. We do need to have Texas in there somewhere. So people don't think they're in Colorado. But anyway, so I think it looks a lot better, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. Hopefully you all are pleased with it. I know, and this is the police, obviously a little bit different, and so that's what we got. And then the street improvements. So this is the exciting news, and we've been talking about it for a long time. And of course, this is like one of the #1 issues in the city of Breckenridge. But the first phase of our street improvement plan will be underway as of 7/27, so, 2 weeks, a week and a half. So we met with Radon today, and just as a reminder, that is going to be, redoing Rose, Elliott, Rose from Walker to 7th, and then Elliott from 183 over to Harvey, and then 7th from Parks over to 183. And then various intersections in town. There's 2 intersections by the school on Miller. And what our goal is going to be, and we again really emphasize this with Radon, is to get the areas around the school done. Just as the whole project should be done barring weather, barring availability of product by mid-August. But we want to start with those areas that are closest to the school so we can have that done before school starts. So that's Elliott and those 2 intersections on Miller that we're looking at here, which is Miller and 2nd and Miller and 1st Street. And then there's some other intersection improvements as well. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to be putting out a flyer with all the information. We're going to be sending it out. When we share it on Facebook, please share it out to your folks so we can just get the word out. I do like that Radon does pass out flyers because we want to make sure, for the most part, there's not a lot of parking along, Rose or Elliott or 7th, but there are a few one-off, and so we'll want to, move that and just, have people be aware that construction's going on and just to be respectful while that's going on. So I'm excited. You guys are hopefully gonna have a whole lot of positive comments. Maybe always during construction, there's probably gonna be some negative stuff, but honestly, I feel like people are gonna be so excited to see improvements happening that might even negate some of the negativity that you normally have with construction. I think the next thing you'll get is the speeding.
Yeah.
So Basil is not here, but you'll be hearing about that, I'm sure. Anyway, and that, other than the events that we have coming up, we do have bulk pickup July 20th. We've got our city party, and it's going to be an employee pool party and picnic on July 24th. You all are welcome to come. We'd love to have you there. We'll be cooking out and swimming and playing some games. And I'm hearing, Commissioner Durham's going pro on the cornhole thing. So, and then we do have our budget workshop on the 27th. I am going to be later, presenting the first look at some preliminary numbers of the budget. But we should get those final numbers. Hopefully July 25th is the schedule. And hopefully there's not a whole lot of adjustments that we have to do in 2 days. And then, have the budget workshop on July 27th. So if there's no questions on that. One other thing I did want to just highlight, Malcolm's going to come up in a minute, but I wanted to highlight some slides from our public works report that we have, and we've been developing this. So these are things that we put out. We put it out at the strategic, planning meetings that we've had. And then our water leaks. This is instructive because the blue is 20 this year, right? And the green is last year. So you can see all those water leaks that we've had, and why that keeps our public works crew singular busy. And then the next slide, sewer stoppages, you can see that green line. Remember they were just going hog wild towards, the last half of the year. We implemented a policy, I think and you see that there. I think the habit had been, to call the city first. And so now we're just vetting those a little bit better and saying, listen, have you contacted the plumber, just confirm that it's, not on your side. And I think that that's been helpful, and that slide shows that. This is the meter program leak. So we are doing the reconciliation and final punch list of that meter program. But you see, there have been some challenges, and our crew was helping those crews. So you see when they started installing last July, just the different leaks that we had happen after they would install the meters, we would have leaks. And so, city staff also responded to that, and that, was a burden on our staff. Obviously, it's leveled off now that we finished off that project. And then just our regular meter leaks that you see there. It's, I think really what you see, that blue line going up is some of those, I think maybe they got miscategorized in the iWorks program. That's just my guess. But again, we do have meter leaks that happen, and you can see that there. And I just wanted to highlight those slides for you. And then Malcolm's gonna give you some good news from the fire department. Come on up.
She never said I had good news before. First of all, it all started about May, when we had our shattered dream scenario. We had 2 sets of jaws catastrophic failed on us during that scenario. And the county stepped up and said, we can't have that. They went out and purchased a brand new set of jaws. But you see here, they're cordless or battery operated. And for years, we didn't know that much about them. And they said, they're the leader in industry. They've been doing that jaws of life longer than you. They probably were there when you were still in DPS.
Yes.
And the county stepped up and they bought us a set, and they said, y'all can pay your half later. And I believe it was 38,000.
Total
Yes.
in our share.
They're the total, so our half's gonna be 17,600 or 17,700. And
You
these
said
things are amazing,
battery operated.
cordless, battery operated. They are amazing. We never would have thought that, but you look how far DeWalt, stuff like that's come nowadays. And I mean, they are amazing. They said they haven't sold the old hydraulic set. We had a 70 or 80 pound power unit with a pump and a motor
Yeah,
and hoses. You had to carry all this to the scene. Now you just grab a tool,
you go.
and they say that tool can run a solid on the scene, solid run in an hour and a half. Which if you go an hour and a half, and we have spare batteries too, so.
Yeah.
But they stepped up. I mean, they paid for it half, and we're we're budgeting the other half for this year to reimburse our half for it. So I mean, those are nice.
And before we had any jaws of life, way back there.
We had crowbars and sledgehammers. Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, they stepped up and they got it done, and we really appreciate that. That was nice of them. And we do have a backup set now, the old style, but we do have a good solid backup set,
Yeah,
plus this new frontline set.
wow, it's neat.
And also, I guess you remember back in November or October last year, we blew the motor in a rescue truck.
Yeah.
So that they've always furnished that truck. So they have bought us a new one. We finally got it a month ago. We got the license plate for it yesterday. But it's been in the shop with recalls, brand new 1-ton truck. So we've arranged with Kel Abbey. It's a pickup bed truck, a dually. So what they're gonna do is Kel Abbey's gonna take all that stuff off and put our rescue bed on it, no charge. They're gonna keep the bed just to help us out.
Yeah,
And it's in Kel Abbey's shop now, so maybe within a week we'll have a rescue truck.
wow, that's neat.
So I mean, things are starting to pick up a little bit. And also about 2 months ago, we applied for some educational grants, and we got those, about $3,000 worth of grants. So we've got 5 or 6 guys taking classes, we become fire inspectors and plant examiners, stuff like that. And that's 100% funded.
Back to the jaw for a second. Do each fireman have to be trained in that?
Yes, yes, sir. That's, and matter of fact, as soon as we get our rescue truck stuff up back there, we're gonna get all the volunteer units in with us and get a couple of cars and just go through it with them.
Good.
And the people that's called MES Emergency Service, they're gonna come down with their guy and re-instruct us on it.
Yeah.
Cause they showed us when they demonstrated it to us, but they're gonna give us more. And these are amazing. I mean,
How big is that, Malcolm? I mean,
now they're big. I mean, they're still probably 70 or 80 pound unit.
yeah,
I mean, cause it's still made out of titanium, a lot of steel in there. I mean, it's still got 12,000 pounds of force on it,
yeah,
but you don't have to carry the pump with it and that, but you just carry one
Yeah.
tool. A lot of time we'll be down in the creek and you've got to carry a pump and that down in the creek or whatever. That's just ways.
I recall all that.
Yeah, yeah, you were there with us a few times.
Many times, yeah.
And,
Matter of fact, the old ones, what they used to cut me out of that black and white
Mhm.
that night.
Yes, sir.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't remember much. I could hear some noise as they were trying to get me out, but that's about it. But
Yeah.
that'll work fast.
Yeah, but these are the state of the art. That's the #1 brand name in rescue tools. Hers has been in the business longer than any of them.
Wow.
And also last week, we put in for another grant for PPE, which is bunker gear and stuff like that, because we have to do our own service for bunker gear, wash it, and our extractor machine, which is almost $6,000, broke down, and that's not the first time I've ever had to fix it. And luckily, we got the grant, I mean, it's like the day after, and it covers extractor machines.
Yeah.
90% funded, so you know, we had to pay $500 worth just to get the new machine,
Yeah.
and we get more bunker gear out of there, and that's Texas A&M forestry grant. So we're doing good right now. We'll have a rescue truck for too long.
That's good.
Was that it? I'll probably get in trouble, Mark, I didn't say something.
Thank you, Malcolm. Appreciate it, bud. Go to consent agenda. Any commission member may request an item on the consent agenda to be taken up for individual consideration. And if y'all will look at item 4 and 5 and don't have any questions, we'll have somebody make a motion on that.
I move to approve consent agenda items 4 and 5 as presented.
A second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. None opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. Action items. Item 6, discuss any necessary action regarding the final payment evaluation report. All
right,
back
so-
to you.
We've been talking about this. This has been part of the overall street improvement plan, obviously using this as the foundation of looking at which streets to include in the paving. So you got the entire report there, I believe, in your packet. And if you have any questions, let me know. But basically, all the streets that you've seen, you know, and I've showed over and over again on that street plan, you know, the near term 1 to 2 years and the 2 to 5, and then the out years. You see there, you see opinions of probable cost, OPC. And just keep in mind, I mean, these are, you know, they try to include contingency in there. But they each have that, and they show the conditions of the road in there. So it's pretty detailed report. You can go through that. If you have any questions, I mean, if you want to mention anything, we showed you the map many times. And I don't think we have it in the PowerPoint, but it should be in your packet. Are there any questions? This is just the final adoption.
Make a motion on that, please.
I move to approve the final pavement evaluation report as presented.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. None opposed? Thank you. Item 7, discuss and any necessary action regarding BEDC action to create a convention and visitor bureau.
So we've got David Miller here, and he's gonna tell you what's been going on over there.
Good afternoon. So back in February, we had the idea that most thriving communities have a convention and visitor bureau. Somebody that is purely focusing on tourism, marketing, community, overnight stays. And with that usually comes events, comes more the entertainment factor that even the locals want to have. So the EDC decided that we would pay $26,000 in a fiscal year and a prorated amount for the remainder of this fiscal year to a part-time position to run a CDB. While because some of the basic things that we needed was just data. You know, how many people are coming, what events do we have, how many people are coming from out of town, and where are they coming, how long are they staying. This kind of data just hadn't been collected in forever. We just had a feasibility study done for a hotel. And all the data that we used to create it, in which it says still that we're able to support a 70-room hotel. It was built on really flimsy data. The demand is probably far more greater than what they even showed. So in order to start collecting the data, start marketing the community, and hopefully court a hotel to come to town, we wanted to move towards creating a convention visitor bureau. The chamber and me and Cynthia have met for the last 4 months, talking through all the scenarios, what the board's gonna look like, what happens if we don't get a hotel in the next 2 years, stuff like that. And so it's really, at this point, it's kind of a pilot program for the remainder of this fiscal year and then the full 23-24 fiscal year. And so I don't remember what the number was for the remainder of this year, but then 26,000 next year. It's gonna be our cost.
6,500.
6,500 for the remainder of this fiscal year. Part of where this is going to come from is, for economic development, we're able to pay for staffing for economic development things. Tourism is included in economic development. Typically, when you get in the bigger cities, you have a position purely, even under the EDC, someone who does tourism for economic development. We are going to actually create this underneath the chamber's umbrella, since they're getting the hotel tax dollars. It's going to keep everything in-house with them. And so they'll create a whole new board and they'll have its own director that will work for that.
There's so many smaller towns that have these, and so this will be, I guess this will be a first for us, Breckenridge, having something like this.
It's part of the conversation has been needing to educate the community what a CVB, what a convention visitor bureau even is, because for the life of Breckenridge, everything that a CVB would do, everyone's been accustomed to the chamber, meaning both chamber work and tourism. And so it's going to be a little bit of an education process just to tell everybody what specifically this thing is doing. It's purely putting heads in beds and marketing this community to people who live an hour or more away.
Like that, yeah. Question, guys, any question on it?
So they've already approved it, so you guys, just need to take action to either approve or deny their recommendation.
All righty.
I move to approve the BEDC action to create a convention and visitor bureau.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye. Hey, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Item 8, discussion and any necessary action regarding the denial of Encore's application to amend its distribution cost recovery factor and participation in the steering committee of cities served by Encore efforts to oppose.
So this is just what it says. So, we're a part of the steering committee of cities served by Encore, and they kind of keep track of what Encore is doing, and they have filed an application to amend its distribution cost recovery factor and update its mobile generation riders, which essentially is, more money. And so this is an effort to, if you guys approve it, then this is, trying to oppose that with the filing. So that's, if you guys are wanting to oppose that, then you support this. I know. It's one of them double.
Is it costing the city more money? Is that what the amount?
Well, it'll cost the consumers more. Now, I mean, from their perspective, they're trying to, increase their prices to recoup, the cost of doing business. So, at the end of the day, they're going to look at all the factors. I mean, did the cities oppose it? Obviously that's probably going to happen on behalf of your constituents. But they're going to look at all the different factors, and if it's justified, it may go forward anyway. But just being on record saying, hey, we want to make sure that this is actually necessary in the cost of doing business.
I move to approve denial of Encore's application to amend its distribution cost recovery factor and participation in the steering committee of cities served by the Encore efforts to oppose.
I second.
Motion, that second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, guys. Workshop items 9, discussion of the 2023-24 draft budget based on preliminary property values. This is just a discussion only.
Okay, so, staff, and I have, sent you guys this, you have it in your information, but staff, has been working a long time, it seems like, on budget items, and if you remember, the strategic plan really kinds of informs the actions that we're recommending. And so I think the two things I really want to highlight, and of course, you guys know this, you've been around the block, these are based on preliminary values right now, and preliminary calculations. So some of the information where we don't have the variables of the numbers that we need from the appraisal district to plug in, we've used last year's figures to calculate these. We will get the final numbers, hopefully July 25th is when we're scheduled to get them. And then we'll hopefully make some adjustments towards corrections on the budget. And then we'll have a workshop, but I did want to highlight, based on all of those things, you know, I just kind of want to go through some graphics to help you understand where we're at and how we allocated those dollars. So this is a history of the certified values here in the city of Breckenridge, and you can just see that it has been increasing. And 19, 20, 21, that's not different from a lot of other cities. It was stagnant, you know, right before, during, and after COVID. And that's what you see. I think too, the challenge from, you know, I attend the board meetings over at the appraisal district. And I think the challenge has been trying to get the values that they're actually appropriate. Because right now, I think they've historically been very low. And so that I think you're seeing that effort to try to get it. It's never going to be market value, but trying to get it closer. And, you know, I can't go too long, you know, you can go to the next one without talking about Senate Bill 2, which happened, I mean, the first year was 2021 that it impacted our budget. And basically it's, you know, it was under the guise of trying to make it more, make the taxing process more transparent. And I'm sure that's what was intended. You know, I don't know that that actually was accomplished, because what happened was, I think people were just getting used to the terms like effective rate. And what that was and what the rollback rate was. And now we've renamed those things. And so we've got to get used to that. This is just a 10-year history of the tax rate here in Breckenridge. So you can see where that has been trending. This budget is based on, our current tax rate is 102, and this is based on a tax rate of 105. And I will tell you, in addition to, you know, Will over at the appraisal district, I think being conservative in the value of 286 million. So hopefully when the final numbers come out, it actually goes higher than that versus lower. Conversely, I'm trying to go a little bit higher. Hopefully when those numbers come down, we actually could come down. I hate to be in a position where I'm like, okay, no, we got to scramble and readjust and course correct. So that's what we're doing. Now, it does 3 cents is 3 cents, and we do understand that. But one thing, and you can go to the next slide, basically each penny, when you do the calculations, represents about 25,000 of new spending dollars. So the 3 cents represents about $75,000 of new spending. So here you see the graphic in the 2022 values with the 102, that city tax based on the value, average value of a home at 175, which is what it is here in Breckenridge right now, would be 1785, excuse me, for, it's almost like an eye test, 1785 for your tax bill. So the proposed tax rate of 105 would be, that tax bill would be $1837.50, which is average increase of $52.50. Okay, so this is basically the debt schedule, and these are the debt payments. And just as a reminder, most of that debt, well, all of that debt is going to be captured from the water wastewater department, because those are all water wastewater projects. And that frees up capacity for the certificate of obligation on the general fund side. But that shows you your schedule. If you remember last year, you guys also, we had extra money that we had in our debt account, which is our INS account, that's dedicated for debt service. And so we were able to take $1.489 million. And what we did was we put it on the backside of 2012. We put an extra $725,000. We will, this payment of this year, put an extra $725,000 payment. For 2017B, we'll put an extra $675,000, taking that down from being maturing in 57 to 54, and 2012 instead of maturing in 44, it'll be 34, 2034, and then 2017A, it's an extra 69,000, which we're only saving a year on the maturity date on that. And then the next slide, so I've already talked about the certificates of obligation. We have the notice of intent to do that. And we will be issuing that in August, because in August, we will know what that certified value number is. And then the finance folks will look at what the market is doing, what the interest rate is doing, and then they'll calculate what we can actually issue in the debt. So you'll hear more about that, but as you know, it's going to include street improvements, it's going to include park improvements and public works facility improvements. The lion's share is going to street improvements. So say that number was $7 million. So roughly $6 million would be street improvements, about $600,000 in park improvements, and then $400 to $500 in public works, the facilities there at the top and bottom shop. So here's the staffing level, and one of the reasons I want to point this out, when you remember our goals, and most of the spending is really attached to, and you'll see that when we get to that slide, the 5 main goals. The 5 main goals were invest in infrastructure, invest in employees, invest in beautifying Breckenridge, invest in economic development, promoting tourism in Breckenridge as a destination. And then this is more internal, but promoting transparency and communication. So most of the expenses, new spending that you see are connected to one of those goals. And sometimes it's 2 of those goals. But we have 68 budgeted full-time employees, but at any given time, we have a lot of vacancies, and currently there's about 15. But this chart just shows you kind of the breakdown, and this is not unusual. Police and public works usually do head it up, and then fire, and you see streets and public services, which is of course parks and cemetery and admin, and then we do have our seasonal on there. This next set of slides shows our fund balance, and really in the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund, and the history of the beginning and ending. And so that shows you a lot of how we've been managing our money. I think a couple of takeaways is really the increased financial stability and the economic recovery as we continue to recover. I think there's a slight uptick in economic development in the city of Breckenridge. And I think it also it indicates the conservative spending that we've had a history of that conservative spending. And of course, it also indicates the increased water, wastewater rates, and we'll see that when we get to that slide. So that's our water fund. And again, it's most time, it's always a good thing. I mean, if we have a beginning balance of $1 million and an ending of $1 million or above, then that means we were able to manage that budget within that year, which is what your goal is. And for the most part, we've been able to do that. And obviously, I think what you're seeing in this slide and then the next one, if you want to go, remember the water, wastewater rate study and the rates themselves that we've implemented in that schedule of rates has assumed certain expenditures. And those expenditures actually didn't happen right away. And that's part of the reason why you do see a pretty big fund balance there in the water, wastewater. So that's market increases, market rate increases for the employees. And there was some equipment purchases and of course, system improvements, many of which are represented by the TWD projects that are ongoing right now. The next slide is this is a total of all the revenue across all the funds. And so, you know, you kind of get a good look of where your money's coming from. And it's, again, this is pretty standard with a lot of cities. Property tax is normally going to be more than sales tax, and you want that. In fact, some cities have policies about what that ratio is because sales tax is more volatile than property tax. Of course, this does show the water fund, which is a separate fund, but it's good to see it in its entirety. And if you go to the next slide, we're looking at just the revenue. And so again, it's that is a good picture that we have almost 50% of our revenue coming from property tax versus sales tax. Because sales tax is great, but then the economy happens and it, you know, it tanks, you know, that can really hurt city operations. And this is just another slide that, you know, shows you kind of more of the dollar amounts versus the percentage and the comparison between expenditure of revenue. Go on to the next one. This is the sales tax history. And I mean, you can see the sales tax has been trending up. Generally speaking, is the, I guess that blue line that is, you know, the current year. You know, we've been a little bit up. Unfortunately, this last month we were down from last year's figures. So I'm hoping that it goes up. But you can see generally that trend has been similar throughout. I will say this year, in this year's budgeting, we probably were a little bit optimistic in our sales tax revenue collections in the budgeting from last year. And this year, you're going to see a more conservative figure because I'd rather be pleasantly surprised and have extra money versus trying to, you know, at the end of the year, we were, you know, we're $200,000 short of what we projected. So you'll see those projections in this budget a little bit differently. These are the general fund expenditures by function. So you see your fires 20%, police is, you know, 33, which again is not uncommon at all. And public services there, and non-departmental and includes, I mean, a lot of that is services like of the appraisal district fees that we pay them, the fees we pay to the county for tax. It also does include debt, and it includes, we restructured the budget a little bit, and we'll see that a little bit more in the water wastewater fund when I get there. But we put all of our IT and our software programs all in non-departmental versus scattering those throughout so we can better track those expenditures. And this is the wastewater fund revenue. You can see on the water side and then the wastewater. And then this is the expenditures, the end by function. So you see the collections and distribution, and that's Billy's crew. Like Daniels is there at 1%, admin 7%, the water treatment plant's 19, the wastewater treatment plant is 19. And then non-departmental, same system as the general fund. It also includes the debt. So where are the main increases? I mean, we do have a 4% increase for all employees, except for fire and police. And what we've done there is this incorporates a $1.50 increase, which is much more than 4%, because we're really struggling to keep those guys and gals there in the department. So, and we've also, if you remember, a couple of years ago, you approved a certification pay policy, but we never funded it. And so what that represents also is a phased in approach to any that meet, the criteria that you need to get that certification pay. You would at least get it at that lowest level. So if you got that basic level, let's say you've got a master's, you're going to start at that basic level for that certification pay. And so that's included. And then the fleet maintenance, you see that expenditure. Remember that fleet program. I mean, on the one hand, we're seeing cost savings across line items like maintenance and fuel, with more fuel efficient vehicles and less maintenance, obviously. On the other hand, if you remember, our fleet is like 30. We have 30 in our fleet, and the goal was 23 this first year. Now, because of the supply and demand that is still lagging behind, I'm not even sure that we'll have 23 at the end of fiscal year 24, and that we received. I mean, we've got quite a few coming in. But it's some stage, but so that represents that upfront. We already have some in our vehicle replacement fund, and this represents another deposit to pay for that as we go. And then we're continuing the Lake Daniels and Gonzales Creek maintenance schedule. And I think the system of mowing and then spraying is probably the way to go. And so that's what you see represented there. And then some maintenance out of the Lake Daniels. Of course, the fire department, the Jaws of Life is 19,000. Cemetery needs a new mower, so you see that. And then this is again a highlight. So what's in that fiscal year does have an increase of 3 cents on the property tax rate. That existing debt is moving over to the wastewater from general fund. So goals 1, 2, and 3 are met by the available, basically freeing up, using that freed up debt capacity for road improvements, park improvements, and facility improvements. So you see the goals that are associated with those expenditures. Goal 2, the increased pay for all existing employees. And even this, and I've got some graphics, and actually I included them in the packet. I mean, it still doesn't get us to market rate, but it definitely is moving us in that right. It just needs to be slow and steady. And then the vehicle replacement program, Public Works, we have 2 backhoes, and we will be able to trade in existing backhoes for that, the Jaws of Life, and then again the Solis Creek maintenance. And that's just the highlight of the preliminary budget, and we'll know more 25th, and have a workshop on the 27th.
Okay, very good. That's it. Thank you. Any information y'all want to add for the next agenda next month, put on it? Anything come up? Nothing, if you don't, you contact Cynthia and Jessica, one of them. All right. 6:26 PM, we're adjourned. Thank all of you very much.
Good job.
Oh.